It's Fan Fiction Friday. Let's see what you cooked up this week. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, December 8th, 2023. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKEDON to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. It is Fan Fiction Friday. You send us your Mariners trades and we grade them on the 20/80 scale. Let's get into them. We're going to start here with Dan, who has a 1-for-1 deal with the Cincinnati Reds. Brian Wu for Noelvi Marte. And this comes off the heels of the Reds signing Jeimer Candelario. And there's some reports out there that say that they want to trade one of their infielders for some rotation help. So this could make some sense. Colby, what do you think?
Pass. You know, it's certainly seen a lot worse on Fan Fiction Friday, that's for sure. But I don't know. I feel like if I'm trading Brian Wu, then I'm trading him for something more established than Noelvi Marte, who's 22 years old. I also wonder if even the Reds would do this. Now, kind of the thing with the Reds, right, is that obviously they want to trade Jonathan India, but you're not trading Wu or Miller for Jonathan India. We've been over this. But yeah, it feels like McLean and De La Cruz, they're not getting moved, right? So Candelario obviously not getting moved. So then it becomes Spencer Steer, Noelvi Marte, Encarnacion Strand, India. So yeah, it's interesting. I saw a lot of people point this out, like they think it would be like a dunk on Jerry if like they had to trade Brian Wu for Noelvi Marte, and it's like it wouldn't be. Like if you like Noelvi and you think he can help you next year, then fine. I would just prefer to trade Wu for somebody who has more than 120 at bats in the big leagues.
Sure.
So,
120 good at bats though. To be fair,
120 or like a 120 WRC plus. And 0.7 wins and about a fifth of a season. You do the math, and you do have a long-term need at third base, but I just don't think I think there's a good chance, I should say, that Urias is actually better than Noelvi this year. Are you going to play Noelvi at second? Probably not. He's probably third base only. So I think if I'm trading Wu, I would do it for somebody who I like the track record of better. But overall, it's a really fun challenge trade. It's somewhat similar to Pineda for Montero. Hopefully this one would work out better for you than the last one. So not my cup of tea, not what I would like to do with Wu, but it's far from, bad. So I guess I'd probably say, like for me personally, 45 overall, I think it's a solid 50.
Yeah, out of the infield options in Cincinnati that are feasibly available, I would say Marte is probably my second favorite behind Steer and ahead of Encarnacion Strand and India. India would definitely be fourth on that list by a mile, to be honest with you, given what I think it's probably going to cost there. I would like a bit more track record as well for if I'm trading Wu. Especially if they're not going to spend the money it takes to go out and get a starter. But I do like the trade. I do like this idea a lot. I think the valuation is pretty much on point. I think, like you said, it's a good challenge trade. I just don't know if that's specifically what I want the Mariners to do in terms of trading one of their starters. I don't know if that's exactly the kind of return that I particularly want, but that's also, based off of assumptions that I'm making that might not actually be true. I'm making the assumption that they might be able to get X for Bryce Miller or Wu, right? I'm thinking that maybe they could get like Randy Arozarena for Bryce Miller, but if not, and this is the alternative, I'll give it like a 50 to 55. Next trade here, it's actually a double trade post from Stan, Miller, and Ty Pete for Yandy Diaz and Manuel Margot, and then Ty France and Emerson Hancock and Jonathan Clase for Max Kepler, Jorge Polanco. So it's basically one goes into the other. You trade for Yandy. That means that Ty France doesn't make a ton of sense on the roster. Still would make some sense. You end up trying to flip him to Minnesota for Polanco and Kepler, along with Hancock and Clase. So the Rays deal first, I think we should go over here, Colby. So what do you think about Miller plus for Yandy Diaz?
It's only 2 years of Diaz. Margot is kind of a platoon only guy. That's pretty steep for Miller and Pete, I would say. You wouldn't think it would be because Arozarena is a worse hitter, but he has 3 years, so like it's not bad. It's not bad, but I think individually this trade, I would look at
it. I think it also depends on how you value Margot. Do you value him just as a salary dump and you're taking him on in hopes of softening the blow of the trade, or do you actually think that he's a good player that can contribute?
I think he's a useful player, but I think it's as a role guy, a bench guy. Like I don't want him to be one of my everyday outfielders next to Julio.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a bit too much for me to give up for Diaz and Margot. Also, in addition, because of Margot's salary, which I think is $10 million this year.
$10 million plus a $2 million buyout.
Yeah,
so
that's
12
quite
guaranteed.
a bit for that's quite a bit for a fourth outfielder. So I think this one's
I think he would be
bit...
a platoon partner with Canzone would be the idea if they got Margot. So
and with Canzone, the odds that he would have to become an everyday player, pretty good.
Well, and also you're going to run into more righty pitchers than lefties, so naturally Margot isn't going to get into the lineup as much as Canzone. So also
so individually this trade, I'd probably give it like a 45. Like I wouldn't be upset if they did a deal like this. Like Diaz is a good hitter and he helps you, and Margot is a solid player and he helps you, and Ty Pete is at least 4 years away from helping you at the big league level.
Yeah.
But there's that star potential, and obviously now you have to go out and you have to replace Bryce Miller in your rotation, and it's not like you got a couple guys who are making league minimum out of this deal. This is going to eat a significant chunk of what we think Jerry Dipoto actually has available for him to spend. So
I mean, we're talking about a hitter who gets on base 40% of the time, has done that back-to-back years. Good. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So like that, there's I'm willing to pay a nice price for that, but also
it would be hard to be upset about that.
Yeah, but also, it's only 2 years of that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's obviously like some downsides to Yandy Diaz. He's only a first base DH type. He doesn't hit for a ton of over the wall power. I think Diaz is a good fit though. And how much you value the years, right? When you're like comparing, say, Yandy to Randy Arozarena or Isaac Paredes, etc.
Right. Part of that is positional fit too. Diaz is a first base only.
That essentially, it doesn't make Ty France expendable, but it doesn't make him a great fit for the roster. Still a decent fit. He could coexist on the same roster as Yandy Diaz because you have the DH spot wide open. So that's not really a major concern here. But Stan's idea here is to turn around and then trade France plus Hancock plus Clase to the Twins for Max Kepler and Jorge Polanco, who and the Twins are apparently trying to dump some salary. Those guys are making some money. They're towards the end of their contracts, so makes sense that they would be the two guys for the Twins to first try and offload. So what do you think about that idea?
I think these two deals together, well, I certainly like, Diaz, and I'm a big Kepler guy, and Polanco. Like this definitely makes your major league roster better. The issue with the trades together as a whole is that you're giving up Miller and Hancock, and you've already lost Marco. Where are you getting the starting pitching from? Because obviously, there's more to the offseason than just these two trades, but you look at these 4 guys, when you add them up and you take away the major league salaries for the guys the Mariners are giving away, you're still adding about $26 million, give or take. That's not counting buyouts for Polanco and Margot. That might be all you have So how do you get the pitching that you need? Because at that point, if you trade Miller, like Hancock's in the rotation, he's the number 5. Well, now if you trade Hancock, who's in the rotation? Because I mean, like Taylor Dollard isn't even healthy right now. Is Jackson Kowar the number 5 starter in this scenario? Oof, that's tough. So obviously I don't want to hold that too much against Stan because we didn't ask for an off-season plan. We asked for a trade.
Yeah.
So assuming you had the money or the resources in place to get a legitimate pretty much number 4 starter in a separate deal, I think this is it's interesting. I think when you combine them together, it checks a lot of the boxes the Mariners need to fill and does it relatively cheaply in terms of money, like getting 3 everyday players and a 4th outfielder for $30 million is really good value. So I think I'd give these combined, I'd give them like a 50. I understand what you're going for.
I'll give the Rays deal a 50. I'll give the Twins deal 55, actually. And then we'll say both of them combined, like a 50 to 55. Call it 52, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, more of your trades coming up here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. And the Mariners might not be playing right now, but the Kraken and Seahawks are. So whether the action is on turf or on the ice, whether it's Jared McCann or Geno Smith, you can bet on it all with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKDON and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Fan Fiction Friday. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a couple things real quick. Of course, this is our last show of our last 5-show week for the next couple months. Again, starting next week, starting Monday, we'll be going to 3 shows a week until pitchers and catchers report. Those episodes will be posted Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Our Patreon episodes will be posted on Tuesday and Thursday. And again, we will break schedule if there is a trade that happens or a signing or anything like that. If we have to do an emergency show on Tuesday or Thursday or on the weekend, we will do it. Don't worry about that. Additionally, mention the Patreon. Right now, if you're a member of the Patreon, you can get an early sneak peek of some merch designs that we've had mocked up. So if you want to see what might be on the way here, check it out. Go over to the Patreon. You can get a free trial right now. So, and of course, we're putting out a couple podcasts every week on there as well. So if you want more of us, if you want to hear more of us, and we talk more extensively on there, those shows run anywhere from 40 minutes to 2 hours. So if you want a lot more Mariners discussion and a lot more just general discussion, we talk about other stuff on there that we like. Yeah, check it out. Thirdly, we need a question of the day. And once again, I did not think of one. So Colby, the ball's in your court, my friend. Question of the day.
I think this question has an obvious answer and an obviously correct one. So it's not really but is a pumpkin, would you classify a pumpkin as a fruit or a vegetable?
It has seeds, so
it's a fruit.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. If you think you can argue the opposite, go ahead and try.
I was always told that if it has seeds, it's a fruit. So, but tomatoes and stuff like that, they feel like vegetables. They don't feel like fruits. So, like I just based off of vibes, I would call a pumpkin a vegetable. But
agreed.
From a technical standpoint, it's a fruit.
There any botanists out there that can help us here? Let us know.
Yeah. Let us know. Let us know. But then are like flowers?
Or is it a horticulturist?
Are flowers fruits then? At that point,
Aren't maybe they're just a different category.
because it's like they come from whatever. We're getting too in the weeds. Aha. Back to your trades. Tower Optimus has a deal with the Giants. Wilmer Flores for Jose Caballero and Emerson Hancock. We've had a Wilmer Flores deal on here in the past. I like the idea. He hit really well this past year. What do you think about Wilmer Flores?
First of all, great at.
Speaking of flowers, flowers. There you go.
You proud of yourself?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the deal with Flores, a little bit Ty France-ish, where it's like he's first base DH only. Now he can still play stand at third base, but he's not good over there. Let's put it that way. He's coming off a career year, so that's always a little bit of a concern when you're paying for a guy's career year, especially when it comes at the age of 31. But it's hard to ignore a 136 WRC plus. He also doesn't strike out. In the last 3 years, he's really improved his walk rates as well. So he's to use a really like annoying term, he is a professional hitter, right? He puts the ball in play, draws some walks. He's got some pop, much better against lefties and righties, but still plenty good against righties. But you get him for this year, and then there's a player option for next year. So it might be 1 year, it might be 2 years. It's your guy coming off a career high. All that being said, I don't know if this is enough to get him. Like the Giants seem like they want to compete next year, or they think they can.
Yeah.
And like Caballero, fine, whatever, but I don't think he's moving the needle at all. And then Emerson Hancock, I think, if the Giants want pitching, they'll just go out and buy some. They've done it in the past. Like the Giants are not afraid to spend. So I don't know if this is enough to get them. Maybe it's an overpay. Like I just don't have a good grasp of Flores's value on the trade market because again, he's coming off a great year, but it is a career year at 31 years old. And a guy whose versatility, which has been a huge calling card of his career early, more or less gone. He's a first base DH type.
Well, what do you think is a reasonable expectation for regression for Flores? And you got to factor in T-Mobile Park here.
I would say going from 136 to like a 115 WRC plus seems pretty reasonable.
So then at that point, is that worth Emerson Hancock, Jose Caballero to you? I would say yes.
1 year?
For 1 year, I would still say yes.
I'm not a big Hancock guy. I'm not, even though I
you think he's Kyle Gibson.
Yeah, even though I've comped him to like an 11-year veteran who just got another $12 million or whatever. Like, yeah, no, I hate Emerson Hancock.
Mid trash. That's
Caballero is like AAA depth to me. I know he had a nice year by F4 and all that stuff, but like, I think we've saw who Caballero is when you play him every day. He's not that guy. So I don't know if he carries enough weight in this trade. So it's 1 year of Flores for 6 years of Hancock. I think I might be able to do better, but also I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. So, I think I'll just give this one like a 45-50. Like, I can't say it's a bad trade.
It's thought provoking.
Yeah, it definitely
I'm not really sure how to feel about it. Yeah. Because I think it could work both ways where the Giants say this isn't enough and the Mariners say that's too much.
Yeah. Really depends on how they feel about Hancock and their pitching depth and whether or not they think they can add to their rotation.
Yeah.
Which, based on Jerry's latest comments, wouldn't seem to be the case. But also, everything you hear from GMs this time of year, typically a lie or the truth is being stretched a little bit. So it's tough to say.
Yeah. Did I give it a grade? 50.
Okay. Lots of 50s today.
Yeah, a lot of 50s. Good job, guys. Proud of you. Daisy and the Dingo, 1 for 1 with the Rays. Prolonder Baroa for Jonathan Aranda.
20.
Man.
Jonathan Aranda sucks.
You hate Jonathan Aranda. What did Jonathan Aranda do to you?
Nothing, but is he better than Josh Rojas? Is he better than Ryan Bliss?
Oh, okay. Relax here. He started hitting this year.
And again, I ask, you sure he's better than Josh Rojas? Are you sure he's better than Ryan Bliss?
Does he need to be better than Josh Rojas for you
Yes.
to add him to your roster? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
He can only play. By the
He's
way,
got
he's
that you
not
can rotate
very
through
good.
the DH. Like,
Yeah, he's a first base only type 2, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, he can stand at second base, but again, please don't make him. So if he's a first base DH only, it's the guy who's got 91 plate appearances in the big leagues. Ugh, I think I'd rather take the shot that Burrow could be a high leverage arm because you know
91
what?
plate appearances. He had 103 this year, and then he had 87.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at projections.
So 190. So 190. 190.
Yeah, and 89 WRC plus, no defensive value whatsoever. I mean,
but
I think I'd rather take a shot on. I'd rather take a shot on Baroa being like a good back end reliever because I need that more than I need a first base DH type who hasn't hit at the big league level.
Sure, fair point. I don't know. I like Aranda. I think there's.
I know you're a bigger Aranda guy.
I think there's a pretty good hit tool there that hasn't
been
fully.
Would be a fun trade that would like put me in some kind of state of, I don't know even what you call it. Emerson Hancock for Jonathan Aranda, just like
yeah.
It's that. I think I'll give this one like a 40. I'd rather take the shot on Baroa because Baroa right now is filling a position I need to fill. And Aranda, like if I'm gonna roll with it full time DH, I'll just go give somebody $3 million to do it, like Carlos Santana. So, like I'd rather just pay whatever it is for.
By WRC
Santana.
plus, like that, he was essentially Carlos Santana this year by WRC plus standards.
And Santana's
less over the wall power.
Player. Yeah. Santana's a proven player, more pop. He plays in the clubhouse, yada yada yada. So, yeah, like I wouldn't hate this. Like I could understand why the Mariners would do it if they did.
Yeah, I think this is like super realistic. Like I think it's very, very, very realistic.
Yeah, I think so. I would just rather have Baroa. I think he fits the ball club's needs more.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And I think right now you really need a high leverage arm, another high leverage arm, and it doesn't seem like they're going to go get that guy that is at least established to be that guy. Maybe they have someone in their organization that can be that guy, and maybe that guy is
going to be an Astro, and I'm going to be so sad.
Yeah, I know. I saw that report that said he was talking to the Astros and the Angels. That's an L.
Darn you, John Stanton. Darn you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe that guy is Prolanda Baroa, and that's probably worth it to you more than whatever Aranda could be for you this year. I know you really need the offense, but you probably should be looking at more proven offense, and then if you're not going to spend the money on relievers, then you probably should have one of your more high upside guys, or you should hold on to one of your more high upside guys.
Did you see him pitch in game 162, Ty? Did you?
I did, and it pissed me off because they could have used that quite a bit over the last stretch there, but I digress. All right. Bryce here has a deal with the Brewers. Christian Yelich, Devin Williams, Willie Adames, and $20 million, $5 million per year on Yelich's contract for Colt Emerson, Johnny Farmelo, and Walter Ford. I'm just going to tell you right now, the $20 million isn't worth it for me to still, even with how much I love Devin Williams, and I love the idea of Devin Williams in the Mariners bullpen. And I really like the Adames idea too. And I think that there is a point that you can go to where I do like taking on Yelich, but this isn't it. I still have to give up 2 of my first round picks this past year and still pay Yelich $21 million a year for the first 4 years of the contract that I have him for, and then 26 again for the last 2, however long it is. That's still a bit much for me. If you can turn Yelich into like a $12 million player, then we can talk. But
I don't even know if that's enough now with the.
Well, yeah, there's also that. Dropping. There's also that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because like I mean, Adames and Williams, they're going to make $20 million between them.
Yeah.
So you're going to add $42 million in payroll that might not be there, and you're not adding a starting pitcher. Like, I don't want to trade Colt Emerson. I'll trade Farmelo. Like, I like Farmelo fine, but like, I don't want to trade Colt Emerson, particularly again, if Christian Yelich is just going to be a $21 million a year player for the next 4 years, and then I still have to pay him 3 more years after that at $26 million.
Yeah.
That's just, I'm out. It's 1 year of Adames. It's 2 years of Devin Williams. I think Adames makes some sense. I think Devin Williams makes some sense. I don't know if Yelich makes any sense anymore, unless he's, again, like if he's a 7-year, $60 million contract, like that's what you're absorbing, fine. But you start to get any higher than that, and it's just like, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for Seattle where they're at right now.
No.
And would the Brewers even take this package if they're eating 50 to 60% of Yelich's contract? Because they probably get more. They just divvy these guys up. If they just trade Williams by himself.
Yeah.
So it's a 30, 35 for me. I like the aggression on it. But it's not realistic enough for me to give it a super high grade.
I'm going to give it a 30. Next trade here from Distraught. Bryce Miller and Jonathan Clase to the Guardians for Josh Naylor and Nick Sandlin.
I don't think Cleveland's interested in that. Cleveland's really good at developing pitching on their own. They typically don't need to go out and trade for it. So I don't think Miller's going to carry as much weight in a trade with Cleveland as he would with other teams. Naylor's a really good fit for Seattle. But honestly, Naylor also seems like the guy that Cleveland's going to extend to like a 5-year, $30 million deal. And we're going to look up and be like, you took that? So I don't see it. I think just in a vacuum, you get these guys off of teams and you just say, are they worth each other? Depending on circumstance, I think that the valuation is roughly right, but just in a vacuum, but it doesn't work that way. So to me, I don't see this as being that realistic. I don't see Cleveland as being a good trade partner overall, but also definitely not for Miller. So I'm going to say, I don't know, 40.
I would say from a valuation standpoint, this is a 50. I don't know if the Guardians would do this though, so I would probably give it like a 40 to a 45.
Mm-hmm.
Last trade here from Jordan. How about a trade with the Oakland A's? Brent Rooker and Esteury Ruiz, as well as Joey Estes, or Brian Wu, Taylor Trammell, Zach DeLoach, Axel Sanchez, and Prolander Berroa.
I think the Mariners are probably looking to add some speed to their lineup. I think Rui's also a pretty good defender. Probably not as good as he should be considering how fast he is, but he's also, I don't know if he's an everyday player. Like there's a little Billy Hamilton here, and Hamilton, as fun as he was when he got on base, didn't get on base enough to be an everyday player all that long. So a little bit of a risk with Ruiz, carrying a lot of this deal. Estes is kind of just a number 5 type of guy who struggles to throw strikes sometimes. Like that's not great. Not a ton of command, but kind of average, slightly above average stuff. He's a number 5 starter. So pitching depth, fine, whatever. Rooker is a guy I like a lot. He's going to strike out, but again, he doesn't strike out because he chases. It's not like he doesn't have a handle of the strike zone. He just swings really hard and he swings through stuff. There is a chance that Seattle could actually help him cut down on his strikeout some. And if he was at 28% instead of 32% on the strikeout rate, then he's really good. He was already like a 120 WRC plus bat last year, crushed lefties, more than handle his own against righties. It's the type of power that plays in Seattle. Can't really play in the outfield. I mean, he could stand out there. Probably not much worse than Teoscar Hernandez, but you guys remember that, right? Whew. So, not a good defender. You want him playing first base or DH. Ruiz, put him in left or right, doesn't really matter. Probably left field is better for him. You put him at the end of your lineup. Rooker goes in the middle of your lineup. For Wu, Trammell, Trammell, DeLoach, Axel Sanchez, I really don't care about. No disrespect to those guys. Love Taylor, the person, seems like a great dude. And I do think that the Mariners are going to trade him and he's going to have a year where he puts up like a 4.5, 5-win season just out of nowhere. But because that's just the way it goes. But
right. Are you saying same old Mariners, Colby?
Sure. Wu and Baroa for Rooker and Ruiz to me.
Yeah.
That's a bit of an overpay. I think you can get Rooker for bulk. And I don't think Ruiz is a future all-star or anything like that. So I don't think he's worth Brian Wu.
No.
So I think this is an overpay.
Yeah.
It's certainly interesting, though. We haven't talked about Ruiz at all. We've barely talked about Rooker. I honestly, I think Trammell, Deloach, Sanchez, Baroa probably get your Rooker by himself. And then is Brian Wu worth Esteury Ruiz and Joey Estes?
No, I'd rather just go without at that point. Yeah. If you replace Brian Wu with Emerson Hancock, I could talk myself into it.
Well, I legitimately think for Rooker on his own, you can get him for like probably Clase, Morales, Sanchez, Trammell, something like that. Sure. Maybe you add Hancock and you take out, Morales if they're not a big fan of him. But I think you're looking at I think you're looking at two like top 12 to 15 prospects and then a couple of top 30 guys just for Rooker. So Ruiz, I wouldn't give up much more than that for Ruiz. And if I had to choose, like if I could give up that same package for Ruiz or for Brent Rooker, I'm giving that up for Rooker over Ruiz.
Right. So right.
It's just, those two guys even combined, they're not worth Brian Wu to me. But both of them aren't making any money, and both of them would be in the Mariners everyday lineup. Ruiz again would be on probably hit 8 or 9, and Rooker would probably right now hit 4 or 5, somewhere in that range. So yeah. I like the two players. I like the creativity behind it. It's a bit of an overpay. I think it would be anyways. So I would say probably a 40.
Yeah. Wu gives me a lot of pause. I'm going to go 40.
Yeah. I think that's probably about right.
And that's at most. I was almost about to give it a 35, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Just Baroa and Wu. I don't think you have to give up either of them to get Rooker. I don't think you'd have to give either of them to give up Ruiz. And just because you put those two guys together, I don't think that's making me give up either of those guys, let alone both of them, to get Ruiz and Rooker. So, but yeah, fun deal, creative, certainly. Some names we haven't talked about, so I'll go, 40.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate, by the way. And for Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez. Hey, I almost said my old at. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.